You grow up in Gary, Indiana, in 2001, in a house where money is never discussed because there is simply nothing to discuss. Your father drives a forklift at a steel distribution center during day shifts only, because he bid for the night shift 3 times and lost 3 times to men with more seniority and less urgency. While your mother works the front desk at a dental office she will never be able to afford as a patient, bringing home sample toothbrushes as the only dental benefit this family will ever see. And you share a bedroom with your younger sister until you are 13, with a wall thin enough between your room and the kitchen that you can hear the specific sound of envelopes being sorted by urgency every Friday night. A skill your parents developed without anyone ever teaching them, because you are not poor enough for anyone to notice, which is the particular cruelty of your kind of broke. Not homeless, not hungry, not technically, just the kid whose shoes are almost right, and whose jacket is close enough, and who has learned to laugh at exactly the right moments, so nobody looks too carefully. But at school you are sharp, dangerously sharp. And your economics teacher, Mr. Beaumont, a Vietnam vet who reads 3 newspapers before class and keeps a mug that says world's okayest teacher without irony, tells you in 8th grade that you ask questions nobody your age asks, and he means it as a compliment, but you hear it as a distance measurement, a calculation of how far you already are from where you started and how much further you could go. So you begin reading about business the way other kids read about athletes, not theory but mechanics, how companies actually work, where the margins go, why the same product costs 3 times as much depending on who is selling it and how. And by 16 you understand distribution economics better than most MBAs ever will, though that knowledge sits in your chest like something that does not belong there yet. And then you watch your father get passed over for a supervisor role he had been doing informally for 2 years. The company hiring someone from outside instead, and your father says nothing about it at dinner. Your mother asks if anyone wants more rice. And you watch him reach for the bowl and understand with a clarity much too heavy for a 16-year-old that the system was never designed with your father in mind. And sitting at that table you decide you will learn the system well enough to build one of your own, which is how everything begins. Then a man named Calvin Marsh, 31 years old and already worth $22 million, speaks at your high school's entrepreneurship day, because his nephew goes there and he owed his sister a favor. And he is the only person in the room who does not seem impressed by being in the room. Everyone else half asleep while you are taking notes. And after the assembly, carry you to the parking lot before your brain makes the decision. And you find him loading into a car that costs more than everything in your house combined. And you say what part of the speech was true. And he stops and looks at you the way people look at something that moved when it wasn't supposed to. And when you challenge the part about passion, he tells you nobody builds something real on passion. Passion is what you say when you don't want to explain the actual reason. And then he asks if you have a phone, and sends you a Dropbox folder of raw market analysis documents with no narrative, and says if you can tell him what's missing by Sunday to text him, and you find 4 gaps by Saturday morning, text him all 4, and he calls back in 11 minutes. And for the next 18 months, you are his unpaid research assistant, which is probably exploitation, and almost certainly the best education available to someone who cannot afford the alternative. Working weekends, building models nobody asked for, learning that the people who do work nobody asked for are the ones who eventually get asked for everything. Riding a bus, 2 hours each way, to his converted office floor in Indianapolis that smells like old carpet and ambition in proportions that keep shifting, bringing food from home. Because you have already done the math on what 3 years of small expenses costs at 8% compounded, and the number permanently changed how you look at vending machines. And it is there that you meet Teresa, his head of operations, who speaks in constraints and runs on bad coffee, and teaches you something Calvin never could. How to see a business as a system of dependencies. Which parts break first, which parts look broken but aren't, where the actual leverage lives versus where people think it does. And you learn more in that office than 4 years of college would have taught you. Which you know because you also do 4 years of college on a partial scholarship in business and computer science, working the Indianapolis job in parallel, sleeping 5 hours a night, living entirely in the distance between what you are and what you are trying to become. Watching other people your age have weekends that belong to themselves in relationships without expiration dates and the specific freedom of not calculating the opportunity cost of every hour. Feeling not envy but something more precise, the recognition that you are choosing, and that what you are choosing over is a kind of ordinary you will spend the rest of your life trying to remember clearly. And at 20% you do not regret it. Still feels like strategy. And then at 21 you have an idea, Not a startup idea in the fashionable sense, but a specific operational, unglamorous idea about how mid-market logistics companies lose 15 to 20% of their margin on fragmented last-mile contracting, and how a software layer that standardizes those contracts and automates renegotiation cycles could capture half that margin for whoever builds it first. And you have mapped it and built a working prototype over 8 months in a 2-bedroom apartment with a classmate who asks almost no questions. And when you show Calvin, he offers to fund it at $150,000 for 35%, a word that arrives before the decision does. Because you have run the dilution math across 4 funding scenarios, and 35% at seed means you own nothing meaningful by Series B. It costs everything at scale. And Calvin looks at you for a moment, and then smiles not warmly but with the specific professional respect of someone who's just been beaten at something. And you finish your degree because you are 3 months from the end, and your mother would not forgive an incomplete. And you graduate on a Saturday, and incorporate on Monday, and call your father from the parking lot. And he is quiet for a long time, and then says, "Okay, one word carrying the weight of every skipped promotion and every sorted envelope." And you raise $1.8 million from 4 angels, giving up only 14%. Spend 7 months making the product work before charging a single dollar for it, so that by the time you price it, you already know it works. And you price it high because high signals certainty. And you close more contracts in the following quarter than in the preceding year. And through Series A and Series B, you learn that each round of funding is a test of how badly you need the money, and that the best time to raise is when you don't need it, which means the system rewards people who already have enough. Something you file away without examining too closely, because you cannot afford to examine it yet. And by 24, you have 180 employees, and by 25 you have 480, and you stop knowing everyone's name somewhere around 250, which bothers you more than you ever say out loud. And then the acquisition offer arrives on a Tuesday, $2.9 billion, and you take it. And you are 26 years old when the wire clears on a Thursday afternoon. And you look at the number on your phone for about 40 seconds, and then set it face down on the kitchen counter and stand at the window of your apartment in a city that does not know or care what just happened, waiting for something that feels proportionate to what just occurred, waiting for arrival or completion or the exhale of a man who has been holding his breath since a kitchen table in Gary, Indiana. But instead, there is only a low, directionless hum, like a television left on in another room. And you call Teresa, and she says, "Congratulations," and you both laugh awkwardly for 30 seconds and hang up, and the hum does not change. And you buy your parents a house. And your father walks through every room twice, touching the walls and not saying much. And your mother stands in the kitchen and cries without trying to stop. And this, only this, is the single moment in the entire year that feels proportionate to what happened. Everything else becoming lawyers and board seats and security protocols, and a communications manager who reviews everything you say publicly, and an assistant who manages everything privately, and the habit of checking exits in every room without deciding to. And when you fly home for Thanksgiving, your sister picks you up in her 2011 Hyundai, and she teaches middle school, and she seems genuinely uncomplicatedly fine. And on the drive, she plays a song from when you were both kids, and sings along badly and unself-consciously the way you sing when there is no audience. And you realize sitting there that you cannot remember the last time you did anything without an audience, or without calculating the signal of it, or the cost of it, or the way it would read to someone watching, because every conversation has become a positioning exercise, and every dinner a relationship maintenance decision, and every minute a resource allocation, while your sister is just singing badly to a song from 2007. And you look out the window at the flat Indiana landscape, and the gray November sky, and the strip malls, and you do not sing along because you have forgotten the words. And that is the part that stays with you. 14 months after the acquisition, they install a professional CEO. Technically with your agreement, but the acquiring company made clear in the polite way that power makes things clear that a founder running a nearly $3 billion integration is a risk profile they are not underwriting. So you become chief strategy officer, which means you sit in front of investors and make the business sound inevitable, while the product gets remade around you. Features deprecated for portfolio alignment, pricing restructured in ways that punish the exact mid-market customers you built the thing for. And what you lose is not the control because you expected to lose the control. What you lose is the specific feeling of watching something become what it was supposed to be. The late night moment when a thing that didn't work yesterday works today, and the only people who know are the 4 of you in the room. And you resign on a Wednesday in mutual language with stock fully vested and number unchanged, which is not poverty or failure. but something more contemporary and specific. The violence of becoming optional inside something you built. And then you try stopping for 3 months in a house in Nashville, with money you will never need to touch, and mornings with no meetings, taking walks, reading books, having dinner with people who have nothing to do with anything you've built. And it is the most uncomfortable you have ever been, because the hunger does not know what to do with comfort. It was built on that kitchen table in Gary, on those sordid envelopes on your father's face, when the supervisor job went to someone else. It was built to solve a problem, and the problem is solved now. But the hunger does not know that. It does not check the account balance. It just runs. So 6 months after you resign, you incorporate again in a new city with a new problem. Smarter this time and leaner, and built on everything the first one cost you. And the seed round closes in 9 days, and at the first all hands, 43 people are looking at you. And you feel the hum again. Low, directionless, the television in the other room. And you are 28 years old, and you have done this twice, and you will do it again, and you already know. And sitting in yet another board meeting, in yet another city. While someone presents numbers you have already reviewed. You find yourself thinking about your father at the kitchen. Sink icing his back after a double shift. He did not choose to work, and you have given him everything he never had. The house. The retirement. The ability to say no to a shift. You solved the exact problem you decided to solve at 16 watching him reach for the rice. And he is proud of you genuinely. And without complication. In the way only someone who never wanted this for himself can be proud of someone who did. But you cannot remember the last time you felt what he feels. That sufficiency. The ability to sit at a table and feel like the table is enough. Because the thing that made you valuable, the relentlessness, the refusal to be satisfied, the hunger that outlasted the poverty that built it, is the same thing that makes every arrival feel like nothing, and the wound does not close when the money comes. Because the wound is the engine. Close it, and you stop. And you are 28, and you already know you will not stop. You just wanted it to know once that you knew. And somewhere in Gary right now a 16-year-old is sitting in a school assembly, most of the room asleep. Someone in an expensive car explaining success in the version that makes the room feel safe, and the kid is taking notes, not knowing yet what he is really writing down. Thinking he is learning how to get out, not knowing yet that getting out and getting free are different destinations, and that the distance between them is the part nobody ever puts in the speech. And after the assembly his legs will carry him somewhere before he decides to go. And the door is about to open, because it always does.